Hey everyone, welcome back to the Lovecraft Easing podcast. I've got Pete Rollick here today, Alan Hughes, Matthew Carpenter, and our guest is Tim Wiseman. Hey Tim, thanks for being here.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you.
Let's do our usual quick introductions for those that are new and then talk to Tim. Tim is one of the creators of a new game on Steam called HPL NYARLATHOTEP Rising. See, I do this and I still can't say it correctly. NYARLATHOTEP is what I usually say. Pete, is that close in your view?
NYARLATHOTEP? Yeah, sure.
Narlath. Okay, well,
I like that you take Imhotep. That the Hotep is like a title, right?
some kind of Bubba Hotep.
So yeah, you got to just say the Hotep.
Have you guys seen Bubba Hotep?
Oh, what a great movie!
It's so funny.
Have you read the sequel?
I've not read the sequel.
There's a sequel.
Joe wrote a sequel?
Joe wrote a sequel. God help us, he wrote a sequel.
All right. Well, I'm Mike Davis. I'm the host. God help you. Do a few other things. Alan.
Alan Hughes. I write about movies and games on the Easing webpage.
And Matt.
Hi, I'm Matt. I run Lovecraft Easy Movie Night.
That's
if
enough.
you'd been following along with us, you would have recently seen such movies as Caddo Lake, The Vortilac, and The Gorge. So we go over all kinds of cool horror movies.
Wait, real quick, before we talk to Tim, you enjoyed The Gorge, and I want to get your take on The Vortilac.
The Vortilac was it was an entertaining watch, but for pity's sake, everyone was so damn stupid. And the protagonist, who I think should have been a military soldier type, was very effete, or I don't know what is the best word, like walking around in his powdered wig and his makeup and doing these weird French dance steps from the 1600s. It's like, for no reason.
Wow.
But it certainly was. It's certainly an entertaining watch.
Have you seen, Nosferatu's on Peacock now?
Everyone pretty much has already seen
that.
I
haven't. I think I'm going to watch it tonight. Tim, I'm sorry. We wonder. You have to put up with us. I'm sorry.
I'll be interested to hear what you have to say, because I respected the artistry of the movie more than enjoying it as an experience, shall we say.
I heard it was slow, and atmospheric. That's what I heard.
It's got a great score. It's got a good cast. Interesting script. The story is just like any other Dracula movie you ever saw. It's just...
But an uglier Dracula, I think.
Well, more to the point, he is perhaps closer to what Stoker intended, with the mustache and the Hungarian kind of, or the Romanian kind of accent.
Kim says fop is the word for the Vortilac guy.
Fop.
That seems right.
Like, want to fop him in the head for being such a...
All right. Pete.
Pete Rollick, I pretend to write things for money. And when they really could just pay me in books. And Matt, I'm going to tell you that it cannot possibly be as bad as the yellow wallpaper.
Well, no. I mean, but like, it's like it wasn't... We watched it. All of us were entertained. We had a fun conversation. Well, I don't even know that I can recommend it unless you're a vampire freak. For those of you who didn't ever see the yellow wallpaper movie, there's one good scene and it happens 3 minutes into the movie. After that, it's torment.
Could be worse. On March 4th, how could it be worse? I will tell you. On March 4th, Beyond the Wall of Sleep releases, starring Edward Furlong.
Well, that's the guy who did HP Lovecraft's The Deep Ones.
Yeah, but I watched the trailer today. I couldn't even get through the whole trailer, much less the... God.
We watched it on movie night ages ago. I mean, Bridget was still showing up then.
Oh, she'll be back.
There was
She's working on
like
some stuff right now.
there's some real gratuitous nudity to recommend it, but they also had like a public rape scene, which was like completely uncalled for.
Yeah, that's not good.
And the other thing is the script sucked and the acting was terrible and the special effects were bad, but other than that,
Well,
with it,
you can look forward to some stellar acting from Edward Furlong, let me tell you.
he wrote another movie that I think I saw.
Yeah, this is the third in a trilogy, and I
And
would tell you
it's
what it
like
was, but I'm having trouble carrying. So
Older Gods or something like that, or the Old
yeah,
Gods. Is that right,
Oh
Pete?
God.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I read.
It's oh
I
God,
saw that.
older gods. Poor Tim.
I could. The Deep Ones movie is like,
The best of the three.
yeah, but it makes me feel like it's either Rosemary's Baby or The Sentinel, um, done with as if it was a Lovecraftian horror movie, but they have no budget.
Pete, I'll bet DeBronzo wants you to watch Beyond the Wall of Sleep when it comes out.
The Bronzo wants me to watch all the bad movies, and if I watched all the bad movies, I would never write any bad stories.
So anyway, Tim Wiseman, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm joining you from dark London.
Yeah. Yeah,
Excuse my voice.
thank you for staying up late for us.
Oh, that's quite all right. I'm looking forward to it. And I've got a bit of a cold too, so
No
that's
problem.
2 strikes.
Could you, before we start talking about the game a little bit, could you introduce yourself and who you are, and maybe whoever you think is appropriate to mention on the creative team?
Yes, absolutely. So the creative side of my life, it hasn't occupied my whole life. I had to have a pretty dull IT job for much of my career. I've always been a role player, tabletop role playing, and used to do things to a reasonable standard, I suppose. And at some point, I pushed a campaign I'd run to Chaosium in Oakland, and they liked it enough to ask me to pump it up to a campaign length. So that came out in 2006.
Wait, tell us about it. What was it?
It was called Tatters of the King. And it was Chambers inspired. King in Yellow, Leng, those nice places. And I took a year off from work to finish it and do it to a high standard, just because I felt inspired enough to do that. I think it was pretty successful. It was subsequently licensed to French and German and Spanish companies, as Chaosium will do, and then those companies have access to the art, or they can also do their own. And there were some lovely editions, and that was lovely too, because I got to speak to the new editors.
Yeah.
They could ask me questions, ask intent, and so forth. And it's of the old school tabletop role-playing Chaosium style, which was a globe-trotting campaign. So Masks of NYARLATHOTEP, again, is the best known of those. But that was 2006. Then I went back to work for a while.
Could you just repeat that title before you go on?
Masks of NYARLATHOTEP
Right.
is sometimes held as the gold standard for tabletop role-playing games of Chaosium.
That's great.
It's a
Congratulations.
sandbox campaign.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I just said that's wonderful. Congratulations.
Yeah. It did something quite new at the time, which was allow you to visit locations in any order. So it's got scenes in Australia, in Kenya, in London, and a couple of other places. And it's clever enough that you can let the players go off in any direction.
Just as an aside, so you're a lot of interest in the King in Yellow and Chambers and that sort of thing.
Yes, that's probably I think we all love HP Lovecraft, but I really do like the Chambers stories very, very much. I love the mood and the feel and the pace and the way it feels like wonderfully early science fiction. It's gorgeous for me, those stories.
Oh, well, we're all in agreement here. Couple of, and I know this is an aside, but you probably know this, but there are some really great um, King in Yellow type novels and short stories out there. One of them, Pete introduced me to. What was that title, Pete? I read it like 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Brian. Ah, well, you're first of all, you're muted.
Yeah, first of all, don't pull that crap on me. I can't
Sorry, I
remember.
didn't know I was going to say it. But
Oh, is it Brian Hauser?
that's it, Brian Hauser. Yeah. Well, while you're looking it up, there's a new one coming out called The King of Everything, and I'll talk about it more later in the show. But it's by a guy by the name of Jack Moody. They sent me an advanced review copy, and I'm really enjoying it so far. But anyway, yeah, if you like. And by the way, Brian Dingman, thanks for letting me know. So
That's Memento Mori.
right, if you're a King in Yellow fan, Tim, you got to read Memento Mori by Brian Hauser.
Thank you.
Have you read The River of Night's Dreaming by Carl Edward Wagner?
I have, yes.
Oh, what a great story.
Yes,
That
yes.
chose one of his very favorite short stories in that vein.
Yeah. No, it's wonderfully claustrophobic, isn't it? My goodness.
Yeah. So, when we recommend books to you, the only payment we request is that you email me back and let me know what you thought after you get a chance.
Oh, great.
To read.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I've written it down.
Yeah.
And in the gaming sphere, there's a chap you may have heard of called John Tynes, who does some wonderful takes on the King in Yellow, modern day and more period.
Yeah.
I should mention that Tatters of the King was set in the 20s, that classic Call of Cthulhu period when the world was just opening up in many ways. Yes, so I have done another campaign length scenario for Chaosium. It's been play tested. It's with Chaosium. They asked me to do another one, which was great. This one is set in Russia, and hence Chaosium sort of hung off publishing it while real world events took the fore. They weren't keen to push it out immediately after the invasion of Ukraine. So, but that's sitting with them. Hopefully
wait. Tell us a little bit about that. Okay, so what era in Russia is it set?
Same period. I'm very fond of that. It's set in 1929. So
Lenin is dead?
Lenin is dead. Stalin's 5-year plan is just kicking into gear. We haven't seen starvation yet. The collective farms have not been run into the ground. And at that point, the Western intelligentsia were flocking to Russia, as you may know, to look at it. Was this the future of the world? It couldn't be any worse than what we'd done with the Great War. Was this a fairer way of organization? Was this the model for a new something that exceeded the Western democracies? I've got a lovely illustrated picture book from the Spectator magazine. I think it's the Spectator, which is still in existence, a left-leaning periodical where an illustrator and a journalist go around looking at the state of the nation through a slightly skew-whiff lens. But people were trying to understand it, trying to understand Bolshevism and communism. And the story is set around one of the first in-tourist, something you don't hear very often, but that was the Russian state travel agency, an in-tourist May Day adventure, really. You took a ship from London to, let's get it right, it was then St. Petersburg, yes. You took a train down to Moscow, you would see some model prisons and that kind of thing. And then you would see the May Day parade in Red Square. And the adventure has the players join one of those as sleeper agents effectively for MI5. At some point they'll need to leave that tour and see another side of Russia.
Any
So
potential timetable on that one being published?
no, I spoke to Mike Mason there, who's the chief editor, and
Yeah.
he's hoping end of this year, according to their pipeline.
I can
So
understand them wanting to hold off somewhat, though.
yeah, I can too. I can too. I mean, we've seen lots of stuff. There was that TV series with Ewan McGregor, A Gentleman in Moscow. I didn't see it, but I'd read the book by Amor Towles, if that's how you say the surname. And so clearly stuff was seeing the screen, but I can quite understand
Yeah.
hesitancy too.
Yeah. Well, we'll look forward to it. So obviously, so much experience writing role-playing games and playing, and Alan here is the real expert, so I'm gonna let him take over for a bit, but I will just say, struck me right away the truth of what you said in an email to me. This is an RPG that, to me, that you can play by yourself. So, Alan, would you think so, or at least
Yeah.
close to it?
Yeah, and I mean, there's such a connection between the first earliest PC games and tabletop role-playing games. And that's what I think your game, this game makes that connection. What's the enduring appeal of text-based adventures on a PC?
Yeah, I love them. You know that.
Yeah.
I was playing them on my Commodore 64 in the 80s.
Yeah. And before that, I mean, this also has echoes of the create or choose your own adventure games. In the UK, it was a chap called Joe Deaver doing those, but I know he wasn't the first. And I remember as a teenager, those having really put their hooks into me in a strange way. As you feel that you're in you're in the protagonist's seat.
Yeah.
Yes, I really enjoyed the Steve Jackson fighting fantasy books.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
is
go
that
ahead.
no, I was going to say, is it text-based? Is there how do you find an audience for people who want to read a game?
Yeah, that's right. Now let me come in quite early with I'm not a huge a computer game player. For me, it's always been sitting around a table or over Zoom like this and coming up with a story with other people in the moment. Now, to get ready to play this game, and I will tell you that the gentleman, Jean-Marcel, who was the creative side behind this, he happened to see Tatters of the King, and he said, well, if this chap can do this for tabletop role-playing, it's the same skills for a narrative-based RPG. So I had to do a little bit of reading and a little bit of playing. We looked at a couple of games. Alan, you might know them. There's a game called The Life and Suffering of Sabronte, which was a pretty well-received narrative game. There's a Vampire the Masquerade game. There's a few of those. There's a game called The Wolf Among Us, which has fairy tale characters living in New York. So there's quite a few that you asked the question, who do they reach? Well, there's quite a few people who like the pace of these games.
Absolutely.
Wolf Among Us has a little bit of action too. It has characters on screen. You control characters. There's moments where you might do something. You might enter combat. You might walk around a room looking for clues. But HPL I'll just call it that instead of NYARLATHOTEP Rising every
Yeah.
time. HPL is quite pure. You're not bashing any buttons. You're not running around. Some people will miss it. Some people will not. But hopefully this conjures both a role-playing session and also hopefully reading a novel. And the 3-character element, I quickly realized, allowed potentially a computed game to do something that I think books and movies struggle a little to do, with regard to choice and with regard to looking at a story through different eyes.
I like how the game presents each of the 3 characters. Whichever one you choose, it's a different visual and sonic style.
Yes, yes. So let me just say a little about the game so people who haven't seen it
Please, and I
know
forgot to
what.
say real quick that anyone who doesn't know this, who's watching live, Tim and company graciously gave me a game code to give away here on air. So I'll do that in a little while. So I'm sorry, Tim, go ahead.
No, that's great. So yes, again, we're in the late 20s. We can play as one of 3 characters, Mark, Anna, or Victor. Mark is a veteran of the Great War, now a solicitor, a little lost. Anna is an artist. Victor is a scholar. You can choose one of 3 characters to play, but you choose Mark or Anna first because they have slightly longer stories than Victor. No less intense, but longer. And as Alan was saying, you get a very different look. So there's a very different theme to the way the game is presented. And in the style of a choose your own adventure, you are making choices. You're making big or small choices. You're moving around from locations. You're meeting people. You are tracking your relationships with those people. They may go up and down. You might be pursuing love, you might not. You are finding things, tomes, guns, bones, whatever. And as you go, you've also got statistics. You've got body, resolve, charisma, mind, and insight. So it's a little like a role-playing game character sheet. Those are tracked. Everything except charisma, you've got to watch it. You don't want to get to 0. The way the game works, if one of your stats does reach 0, you hit a crisis event with a name. 3 crisis events, and that's the end of your game. And very rarely there's also an instant death. Very rarely, but if you make a bold choice and perhaps weren't equipped to make it and insist on making that choice, that is the game over in one moment. But it's not a game that's designed to sort of wipe you out early. It's not meant to be challenging in that way. It's more about exploring the character and exploring what you want, because the characters can also choose, as we know in Lovecraft, do I fight this evil? Are we sure this evil is evil? Perhaps it's a good thing. And when the moment comes, do you have the resolve to see through your intention? The 3-character dynamic that I thought was fascinating for me was in each telling of the story. If I'm playing Mark, I see Anna and Victor. I have relationships with them. I have a pre-existing relationship.
That. That's great.
And I manage my relationship with them. And I can be good to them, bad to them. Hopefully I'm good. But I play through the story as Mark, and now I play Anna. I immediately learn things about Anna I never knew as Mark. And for me, that was just fascinating because as wide-minded as we'd like to think we are, it isn't all that easy to understand where people are coming from all the time, especially in stressful times. And I thought this was an in a story like this, I thought it was fascinating to look at the assumptions we make and try to see not only when you're playing a second story to see, all right, now I'm seeing it through very different eyes. I wanted us to look back at the first story that we played and perhaps see that first story with new eyes too, and understand something we hadn't understood the first time through.
That's quite different. That's quite different, and I'm thinking of, you know, where this all started for me is the Choose Your Own Adventure books in the 80s when I was small, and I would literally bookmark every time I made a decision. And so when I got to one where I died, then I'd go back and make a different choice,
Yeah.
but I'm still the same character the entire time, you know,
Yeah.
unlike this when you
Yes.
replay.
When we just started writing this story, you might know the movie The Last Duel, Ridley Scott movie.
Yes.
These guys do. I don't think I've seen it.
Is that the Napoleonic? No, that's
yeah. So Ridley Scott movie had Adam Driver and Matt Damon and Jodie Cromer. It did the same thing. It told the same story through three eyes: the Lord's eyes, the Knight's eyes, and the Knight's Lady's eyes. I think it was partially successful. There were key moments which they showed, and the second and third time you realized, all right, I wasn't being told the truth the first time, or I didn't see the truth. But I thought it was just slightly repetitive for me. I just felt that some of the time you were waiting for these key scenes to drop. But I think with a computer game, you've got the ability to revisit those scenes in subtly different fashions, and the game does that. You will see the same story, you will see the same set piece scenes, but between that, you can go off and do things that you have not seen. So if you play as Mark, at one point you get separated from Anna. When you play as Anna, you can see what she was doing.
I know Alan has more questions, but can I quickly ask before I forget? It's obviously available for PC. I've got Linux, worked just fine. Is it or will it be available for Mac and mobile? Are there any plans?
I'll need to check on that. I think we're seeing how the launch goes.
Yeah.
The intention, I think it's been tested on Mac, but I don't think it's been and worked, but I don't think it's been released as Mac compatible yet. So it's PC compatible. There's nothing in the graphics and such that would make it very difficult to run on those platforms, though.
Yeah.
You're effectively looking at, I'll just explain this as well for people who can't see it. You're effectively looking at a page of text on the left, as if you're looking at a book, and pictures on the right. And there's hundreds of pictures that we had great fun sourcing, and we've put the characters into the pictures. We've managed to animate some of these old pictures. And we did spend a lot of time trying to make sure that it was very, very true to the year it was released.
The music really sets that mood right away too.
Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it? We did get a chap called Pierre Estève, a friend of Jean Marchel's, did the music, and it's all new music. It's lovely.
Yeah, Mark's Adventure is kind of more of a traditional adventure score, and Victor's is a darker, more gothic theme.
Yes, yes. Without giving too much away, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, I hope the time and place, it's a period I know well, so hopefully the time and place is very real. I was very proud of managing to source a picture of the Chrysler building, which hadn't quite been topped off in 1929. It's a 1930 building, but I found a picture of it with the that lovely spike at the top of the radiator isn't there, so you've got light flooding out of the gap. I was so pleased with finding that.
So if you enjoy RPG games, folks, the challenge is always finding other people to play with, obviously, and this is the kind of game that you'll like. Alan, you have more questions?
Just a few. I mean,
Yeah,
I
please.
don't want to spoil too much, but you do spoil NYARLATHOTEP in the title, so you know he's coming.
Yes.
Care to expand on that? Why? I mean, it fits into the period you've set the game, so
Yes, it fits into the period. I think when you look at the Lovecraft mythos, the majority of great old ones and outer gods are ignorant of mankind, and mankind are ignorant of them. But the Nyarlathotep stories, yes, there are moments when he walks the earth, he interacts with human beings. So it's the one character, yes, character, one character I think you can use with the idea that there's a level of interest, a paternal interest, perhaps, in what mankind is doing. As you say, Alan, we've told that he's coming. I try to still keep the character in the background, and what you can do with Lovecraft and the stories, obviously, is you see the great old one or outer god through his agents. So I have created a couple of characters that are a little nearer to mankind that we can interact with. There's some threat, but it's Nyarlathotep is still in the background, hopefully. But that's the threat. You are trying to stop him walking across. Or not.
I was about to say maybe.
Yes, yes. As I said, perhaps it is not a good thing. Perhaps it is not a bad thing. It does allow the characters to make those choices. It does allow the characters to make the choices.
Alan?
I'm trying to think of since you brought it up, have there been any, pardon my ignorance, have there been any Chaosium games or any other ones where you kind of take the part of someone trying to summon the great old ones? Has there been a reverse?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's too much to say that Victor is a slightly conflicted individual. We've described him as a scholar, and anyone who knows their Lovecraft knows that you don't want to be a scholar in in a Lovecraft story. But Victor does not think he's a bad person. We don't think he's a bad person. Good question, Alan. I've played a couple of one-shots campaign convention scenarios where you do play the bad guys. It would be more of a challenge to play the bad guy over a long period in a campaign length game. But when I was writing Tatters, and the same with The Dead Within, the new one, it was very important to me to try to think, why would someone do this? It's the same with any movie where you're looking through the eyes of the villain. I demand a well-written villain who is doing things for a reason, who can look themselves in the mirror, who is not they've got to be thought out. And I think you can do that in Lovecraft. I think you can make your misguided individuals misguided for the right reasons.
Yeah. A long time ago, we did an episode. Maybe you remember, Pete and Matt, where I posed the question, why are people trying to bring back Cthulhu or Dagon and so forth, or and to me the best example was the Shadow over Innsmouth. They're not doing this just for no reason, for no motivation. They're doing it because they couldn't catch any fish, the town was starving, and now it's not. This is what they get out of it. So
yes, and in Innsmouth they have a respect, don't they, for Father Dagon, Mother Hydra. They have a respect, and they have a history, and they share a bloodline. And I think with this period, the end of the Roaring Twenties, it's been a reaction to the Great War, and we're about to enter a period which is not as happy, the Great Depression. the coming towards World War II. We're in a world which is not good. The Great War solved nothing. Younger people who have rebelled against the Victorian era and their fathers and mothers, or their fathers, let's say, who took them into the Great War. This period of almost fevered reaction to everything that was happening in the Edwardian and Victorian eras. It also does, for me, have a feel slightly of madness. You've got so much in the 20s that is changing. The other decade I'd liken it to is the 1970s. Those periods for me are the periods I like when I write, if I'm doing scenarios, because both periods there was so much happening. Music, the world was opening up in both instances. They both feel like reactions to what has gone before, and they both feel like decades which set the tone for 20, 30 years afterwards.
Yeah, I like the word you use, fevered. That's a good description of what happened in I guess both the late 20s and the 70s.
Yes, and for me, when you look at the 20s, you can look at it now and it feels just incredibly modern in terms of fashion and the way people behaved. I've done quite a bit of reading on the period, and I tried to bring some of this into the game. Alan, you probably remember when you're on ship, you end up talking to someone, and I used that as a period to talk about how life had changed for women just in the last 5-10 years in the 20s. And a young woman, her mother, her whole life would have been looking after the house. Her whole life would have been sweeping and ironing and laundering and baking. But in the 20s, suddenly you had these labor-saving devices. You had an electric iron, you had a washing machine, you had a bakery in your small town that would bake bread for you. All these little things that we take absolutely for granted were new in the 20s. And suddenly, the reason women could have jobs was they had the time to have the job. They could go into the city. They could go into New York. There weren't that many jobs they could choose from yet. There would be retail or secretarial or something like that, not much more. But my goodness, what a turnaround in just sort of 10, 12 years. And it came from, we always look at our world and think it's changing fast. Well, my goodness, for me, the 20s moved faster than any. And yeah, young women going out, smoking, drinking, sleeping before marriage. This was all new, and it would have been so shocking to the older generation. My goodness.
Yeah.
From my perspective, the 19th Amendment was not too far before that. That was a huge change too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Britain and America gave women suffrage at about the same time, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. In the UK, I think in 1919 it was women 30 and older. So it came in a couple of waves. And yeah, 1929 also the Wall Street crash that features in the game. So there's lots of lovely color to play behind the story, and ways you can include those into the story. And as I said, the choices are large and small. So as Mark, you'll be asked for investment advice at one point. While the everything, all the ticker tape is going crazy and people are stood in the street outside their stockbrokers.
How did you first get into Chambers and Lovecraft? What sparked your interest originally?
Yeah, so Lovecraft, in the UK, there were a couple of omnibus editions of Lovecraft's books, and I picked one of those up at a book exchange in Tunbridge Wells in Kent, where I grew up. And as with many of us, I think the writing was like nothing I've read before or perhaps since. There was just a suddenness to the writing, an impact that it had. It kept me off balance. I didn't know what I was reading, and I didn't know what I just read. Love Chambers I came to later. Um, uh, I forget how I found Chambers. Could have been through the role playing. Could have been through the role playing and references to it there. And yes, at that point, I had started going to the Necronomicon conventions in Rhode Island. I think some of you guys do that.
Yeah, we do.
And so meeting like-minded people, and then I got an idea that, oh goodness, this is the gift that keeps on giving. It can be film or poetry or fiction or gaming or
Can I ask about what year did you go to the Necronomicon first?
This was about the turn of the century. I went to 1997, 1999, and 2001, I think.
Yeah, I don't think any of us went to those early ones because it was defunct for a while and
That's
resurrected
right.
in 2013.
No,
You've
that's
been
right.
involved since then.
Yeah, yeah. But no, that was a real blast. Yes, and then from Lovecraft and Chambers, I branched out a little bit, and I think the most the scariest book I've ever read has got to be Fred Chappell's Dagon. I mean,
Yeah.
my goodness, my goodness, I've never summoned up the courage to read it again. It's still on my shelf. Yeah, I don't think I can read it a second time. But he was a guest of honor one year at Necronomicon. So
You plan on going next year or anytime in the future?
I'd love to. I hadn't. It's. I'm sure it's a fantastic. Is it still
It's a
in Rhode
blast.
Island?
Yes, in
Yeah.
Providence. Yeah.
Yeah, lovely, lovely. No, I would. I'd love to because I still remember I still remember those those conventions very well. I met a guy called Alan Rook there, RUCH. He had a site called the Labyrinth. He was really into Melville and Lovecraft. He saw some collision there. And we did a live action role playing, which I tend to sniff at. It has got connotations of hitting people with foam swords, but this was Necronomicon. I thought it had a certain dignity. I could do it. And we tumbled out into the town, and we're supposed to be looking for clues. As you know, Rhode Island is a fairly sleepy town. I'm not kidding. Within 5 minutes, the police were there. Within 5 minutes, and we took refuge back in the hotel. We quickly, there was not one squad car, but 3 or 4, and we just realized, no, remember where you are.
I am not so sure that would happen today.
Okay,
You'd be tolerated pretty easily, but you'd
good,
still be
good.
climbing all those hills.
A quarter century has passed, and actually, Providence is very cosmopolitan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
And
I know someone who would not approve.
I think when you do go, you'll be surprised at just the expanse of panels and films and,
I will.
all kinds of things to do at Necronomicon.
Yeah,
So,
no, I will. I enjoyed it so much. Yeah, and all the artists, it was fantastic. Yeah, yeah. There were, I remember university professors giving talks on numbers and mathematics in Lovecraft, in Rats in the Walls, and these things, and you're just thinking, my goodness, you can attack this from any angle, any angle. Wonderful. No, you've emboldened me. I'll definitely come back.
well, glad to hear
I'll
that.
definitely come back.
Well, I don't think
Mm.
we've missed any since 2013, most of us. So I'm sure I'll be
Oh,
there next
fantastic.
year. Yeah, Necronomicon. It's
Yeah,
it's in August every other year now. You might know that, but
yeah, yeah. Oh,
uh,
that's fantastic that they've got their feet under them and it's doing so well. It's good to hear.
well, it's a huge effort from a lot of people,
Mm.
but Niels Hobbs is the guy in charge, and I can't say enough good about him. He does a fantastic job with Necronomicon.
Mm.
Him and everyone who works with him to do it. I mean, it's a labor of love. It's not like he gets paid.
Mm.
So
Is, is it 3 days?
Yeah, it's basically you can come in on Thursday for like pre stuff. The opening ceremonies are Friday late afternoon, and then it runs through the end of Sunday.
yeah.
But
Nice.
you can come in a couple days early. There's stuff to do.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Um, there's parties, there's concerts.
Walking tours
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
Providence.
Yeah. Lovely. Um, uh, I will say that the game touches Providence. And I was able to just put in a couple of little Easter eggs there. One of the locations is the Charles Dexter Ward house, for instance, although it's not mentioned in the game. Or that link couldn't be mentioned in the game, but yes, we see a couple of Providence locations.
Well,
The game.
go
Sorry,
ahead.
Matt.
I'm sorry. You were.
No, I was just going to say that the game. I should tell you the game does a little bit of globetrotting. So you start in London and Suffolk, which is Eastern England, and Cambridge is there, the English Cambridge, and then we take the Mauritania across the Atlantic, and we see New York and Providence. So that that is very traditional in the tabletop role playing to have that sense of grandeur. You can part of the fun is the description of the locations and being the fish out of water, and not only trying to put Nyarlathotep in his place, but trying to navigate New York City in 1929 at the same time.
Well, thanks for talking
Alan, were
to
you
us about it.
successful in your? If I
Sorry.
can ask a question, Alan, were you successful in your forays into the game?
Well, yes, I did. I succeeded as Mark. I had a lot of early deaths because I didn't pay attention to my body statistic. Uh, and Victor, I had a couple of different outcomes with him. I've not completed the Anna playthrough. How many, just curiosity, aside from early death, how many endings can be unlocked? Do you have an estimate?
Yes, so I think I think it's 15 for Mark, maybe 12 for Anna, maybe
Oh.
6 for
Yeah, it's not
Victor.
always death. It can be insanity.
Yes, by endings, I'm saying you make it through the game, but as you say, some of the endings are still a little bleak, as our subject matter would suggest. Does Victor have a very happy ending? Probably for him. What it also does, Alan, in the last chapter, normally you're making a lot of decisions to move you from point to point. In the last chapter, you might have noticed that you're not making decisions, but all the decisions are made for you based upon your earlier decisions. So in that
Yes,
last chapter, sorry?
You're locked into a course of action.
You're locked in based upon I don't know, did a marriage proposal, was a marriage proposal made? Was a marriage proposal accepted? Was a loved one lost? And those are locking you down into a trajectory that your story deserves. Though there are last minute decisions to And then finally, there's I'm never very good at ending a story, or I never want a story to end, is a better way to say it. So I won't give away, Alan, what you'll have seen, Alan, but there's just a sort of revisitation to say, okay, how's hopefully a little more satisfactory than the crawl at the end of a TV show or something, to say what happened to the various people in it. Again, you get a chance to just see what happened beyond the immediate aftermath, which might be a little bloody and a little too close to understand what's happening. So you hopefully you do get a rounded end to your story. I had a blast doing it.
Yeah.
And you waste so many words. I think we all understand word count. There's about 170,000 words in this thing.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
It's big. Now a few of those, because of the choices, a few were replicated, but I tried very hard, even when you're going along these paths and it looks like an electrical diagram. We developed a proprietary tool that I could write this in. And it looks like a circuit diagram. You're going along these routes and then you're coming back, and it looks like it looks like an electrical engineering diagram. But because you're going from 4 choices, okay, and if you give 4 more choices off those 4, you're up to 16. 4 more and you're up to 64. I never went up beyond that. But very quickly you've got 64 different blocks of text to show the reader. And the reason they're there, okay, the text might be similar, but I was a little carried away, because I tried to make sure that something changed at least.
So how long did this take you to write? That's a lot of words.
Yeah, about 18 to 24 months.
Wow.
Well, I have a question from the audience. How long does it take to play? By which I think he means to get to one of the endings. What's typical, I mean?
I think Alan might be better to answer that.
Yeah, that's true.
How long to get to one of the endings?
If you kind of figure out, once you've kind of learned how to avoid a sudden death, learn the statistics, I kind of did it trial by error, but if you kind of know what you're doing, I think you can reach an ending in about 3 hours.
There's a lot of playtime with this game then.
Yeah, so then you play another character. So it's a good value. You can get easily, I mean, I've played it probably 12 to 15 hours, and it doesn't sound like I've fully explored all that there is there.
No, perhaps not. Perhaps not. I wouldn't think so. No.
So it's
Yes. So those endings, the multiple choices are important, because you award. It might look the same, but you're making different awards. So you might penalize someone 1 body, but give them 1 mind if they have done something dangerous but good. You might do the opposite if they have done something safe but a little cowardly. So you're trying to make these choices meaningful. And yes, you get to play with you get to pick up some books, and then in true Lovecraft fashion again, you do get the choice of how deeply you read them. We asked the players, all right, what are you doing tonight? Are you reading your book or not? And if you read the book, you might get some ability, but you might also lose a little more of your mind. So the medium lends itself quite nicely to the stories we all know.
Yeah. Well, Tim, thanks so much for talking with us about the game. Again, it's on Steam and GOG, right? Whatever that is. I don't know what that is. HPL NYARLATHOTEP Rising. And there is a demo there, and I'll give away a copy in a little bit. But yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for chatting with us.
Lovely talking to you.
Yeah, you too. I know it's late
I'll
there.
Stick around and
okay.
I'll stick around and listen.
All right, sounds good. I don't have that much.
Feel free to speak up.
Yeah, please
Enlighten these barbarians.
Thank you.
Alan says he saw the monkey and liked it, right?
Sure.
Sure.
Good comedy horror. Some very inventive deaths, but it doesn't go too heavy on the gore. So,
Kelly Young told me the other night he saw Heart Eyes. That's Heart, and liked it a lot. So I guess it's a kind of a comedy horror Valentine movie. So not really my thing, but
I saw Captain America: New World Order, and I saw a movie called Altitude on, I think it's on Max.
that's been around a while.
Altitude?
Yeah, it's like a Lovecraftian type movie, right?
It's a 2025.
Oh, okay. Well, two movies with the same name then.
Well, I know the one you're talking about. You're talking about the kids in the airplane.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
with Cthulhu.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not great.
it's not bad. But Altitude is with Anthony Mackie, who also stars in Captain America, and it's kind of a pastiche of A Quiet Place. It's not bad. It was enjoyable. I watched it.
Okay.
I didn't hate it. Had
Well,
some decent monsters.
well, okay. How was Captain America?
Captain America was a Marvel movie. I enjoyed it. Very very focused on Anthony Mackie as the new Captain America and where he's going to go. Um,
That's great, and I'm glad, but I'm just sort of burnt out on Marvel movies.
I can see that.
This is me personally.
No, I can see it. I think it's a tight little film.
Yeah.
I didn't have any real complaints.
All right.
I really enjoyed it. It's a nice little action spy thriller.
And let's see.
Thunderbolts is coming is the next Marvel movie. I'm
Yeah.
probably a little interested in that one.
Thunderbolt, huh?
Thunderbolts.
There's
Um,
Like their version of Suicide Squad, I think.
Very,
Yeah,
very
kinda.
much, yeah.
oh, is it? I don't know
Sort
anything
of.
about them.
We'll see. No.
Laird's got a new story up to read for free, Laird Barronin. And A Gateway is what it's called. That's two words, Agateway. And it's free to read at Reactor. So
I'm like 2/3 of the way into it. He had written stories about a woman who is really tough traveling across the country and having some adventures, including one where she was figuring out who was killing pets.
Jessica Mace.
Yeah. So this kind of has a little bit of that flavor. It also has prose that makes me reminiscent of Joe Lansdale.
Oh.
You know, it's like very entertaining prose. Like, you know, Lansdale just can spin a sentence.
Yeah.
And it's got, I'm not saying it's like what he would write, but it's like it has a flavor. Just like it has a flavor about like Laird Barron's some of his earlier stories about that other woman who's what was it, Mackie something? No, what was her name?
Jessica Mace.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm super enjoying the story.
Well, you can't beat a Laird Barron story that's free to read. I mean, come on.
No, especially one that's it's this entertaining.
Yeah. Well, you guys all know about the asteroid that's gonna kill us all in 2032, right?
Well, how soon I'll die before that? Haha.
Probably. Well, you do have one foot in the grave. But that said, January 22nd, 2032, you know, Neil deGrasse Tyson had a little talk about this that I really enjoyed. And the essence of it is the the closer we get to that 2032 time period, the chance of it hitting is going to either go down to 0 or 100%. And essentially, when we know more, we'll be able to predict more. And, you know, so we'll see, but I seriously doubt it. But it's an interesting thing to think about. And it's supposedly a city killer, not a
Well,
planet killer.
look at the planet, look at the moon. It's pockmarked with collisions.
Oh, absolutely. We're lucky Jupiter keeps a lot of that crap away from us.
Plus, I think especially our relationship with our moon has something to do with.
Not my cat Jupiter, but the gas giant.
No, yeah. Well, actually, Jupiter has a huge gravity well. It's hard to get past.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
do we have a government agency that might be tracking this asteroid that?
Oh, there's plenty.
That still exists?
I literally thought that like 3 days ago, the probability went to 0 after new things came out, but I don't know. I'll have to go back and check.
The answer is, if you're worried about, if you're out there listening to this and you're legitimately worried about this asteroid hitting in 2032, probably not. But the point is that the closer it gets, the more information the scientists and astronomers have. And if it does hit, if it's 0, nothing to worry about, as Neil deGrasse Tyson said. If it goes up to 100%, they are going to know exactly where it's going to be. They're going to have time to prepare. We're going to have time to prepare.
There was an arc that was published, ran from India through Africa and then into South America, in the northern part of South America.
Yeah. Since we talk about cosmic horror a lot, I thought this would fit right in.
Yeah, right. Well, we are not recommending that you viewers out there throw away your lives, grab your guitar, and head to Nashville.
Yeah, quit your jobs. Everyone quit your jobs right now. It's going to hit. So
this is actually the beginning of the alien invasion, and it looks benign, but this is the start.
You've been reading a lot of Arthur C. Clarke, haven't you?
Oh.
You can't read too much Arthur C. Clarke. Speaking of, damn it, I clicked the wrong damn thing. Speaking of astronomy, Pete, you probably heard about this one too. Largest structure ever found in the universe recently. QEEP, I think it's pronounced.
Yeah.
Is 1.4 billion light years long.
Right.
The one they've previously found is 1.1 billion years long. It's made up of superclusters of galaxies, and I forget what else. Huh?
Using the phrase structure implies a certain thing. So you could just say phenomena.
Well, you could. It's all bound by gravity.
Objects.
Yeah, it's a cluster of galaxies bound together by gravity.
Right. The same. If you go down small enough, your body is exactly a lot of empty space too. All right. So
especially in the skull.
Are you talking about me or you?
No. Well, I would never say that.
Yeah, you would just think it. Let's
see
here. Oh, yeah. The interesting thing is, and Pete, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but it's clustered in such a way they think that astronomers previously are of the opinion that it should be more uniform, but it's not. It's clustered.
Right.
So, the answer probably is the universe is even bigger than not bigger than, as who was it, Clarke said, than they suppose, but they can suppose.
The universe is not just stranger than you think, it's stranger than you can think.
Right. I did see an article that said that this supercluster makes up 17% of the universe. And I'm like, how in the hell can you know that? You can't know that. I mean, the only way you know that is if you know how big the universe is. So, anyway, if I haven't bored everybody on this topic already, if you're not familiar with light years, 1.4 billion light years long. Just to put it in perspective, it would take 4.5 years to get from Earth to the nearest star, Alpha Centauri, which is triple star cluster actually, at the speed of light. Our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, is 100,000 light years across. So, you know, even if you could travel at the speed of light, which it's a vast understatement to say that we can't get anywhere near the speed of light, it would still take you 100,000 years just to go all the way across our galaxy. And then it's 2.5 million light years of empty space between here and Andromeda. So, or as Steve Martin said, a light year is the same as a regular year, only with fewer calories. So,
Oh,
in
and
Roxanne,
people still think aliens come to visit.
And that's still smaller than the library in the book you recommended to us a few weeks ago.
me?
A Short Stay in Hell.
Oh
Was it?
God, I don't want to think about that damn book. I should kill Kelly Young. Yeah, it's a really imaginative novella, A Short Stay in Hell, but I'm trying to block it from my memory. But you should read it if you're not me. I read it all in one sitting, and then I think I texted something obscene to Kelly. So, yeah. Anyway. Oh, I was gonna mention The King of Everything. See if I can find this again real quick. Jack Moody. All right. Yeah, the King of Everything is, and as I said earlier, Tim, this might interest you. Um, and the synopsis really caught my eye. So here it is. The King of Everything by Jack Moody. In the heart of an empty city, humanity's last echo lingers. It's described as Robinson Crusoe in a Lovecraftian landscape, but looks very King and Yellowish. The last human wanders through a metropolis frozen in time. The streets still hum with electricity. Food and drink remain fresh, and forest fauna roam the streets without worry. By day, it's a surreal paradise, but at night, shadows emerge from the darkness, slaughtering any creature foolish enough to remain in the open, stacking the corpses into towering pyres set ablaze as offers to a greater eldritch being. Um, I won't read the whole synopsis, but that's the first paragraph. So
That's just Miami on a Saturday night.
yeah, it's not out yet. I forget when it's coming out, but it's coming out in a few months. March, thanks. If anyone has a link to it, I lost the link. Maybe post it in the side chat.
You could look it up on Amazon.
That's true. Why do you have to take the mystery out of everything? Everything.
Sounded like a little like a Jack Vance science fiction novel gone to a greater degree.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, well, I really like, King in Yellow, Carcoosian kind of things. Anyway, as I mentioned with Brian Hauser's book, Memento Mori. But lately I was thinking, I'm really in the mood for kind of a Last Man on Earth story. Started rereading I Am Legend, Richard Matheson. And then I came across this. I was like, wow, this is fortuitous. So, Ghost Story, Peter Straub, is $1.99 on Kindle right now. So, public service announcement. And
I will
yes.
compile another list of the available King and Yellow themed novels and anthologies for you.
That'd be great. If you're a Patreon, a couple years ago, we did a really, really wonderful episode, a Patreon podcast episode, on the King in Yellow, and Rick was there, and we've got a bunch of links in the post. It's you should look it up if you're a patron, and if you're not, it's only $5 a month. So, save me from getting a real job.
Less than a dozen eggs.
I'm sorry.
Less than a dozen eggs.
Yeah, it's a good point. Hey, if you go to Starbucks a lot, I'm not picking on you. Just skip one once a month, and there you've got the money. So, speaking of Patreons, we're gonna have Darren a while back asked us to do an episode on pulp writers, and so Pete and I and Matt and whoever's interested, Alan, are going to do that within the next week or so, depending on Pete's schedule.
Yep.
And then I think I finally talked Matt into we're going to pick some Lovecraft stories and discuss them one at a time. So I know
Yeah,
you've been
I'm
doing.
slogging my way through. I'm down to like maybe 5 stories left of my reread.
I'm
The latter half of his output wasn't his best, shall we say.
We're not going to go through the whole list. We're going to go through the ones we like. So, and those won't be the only Patreon episodes coming
And
out.
we
I
don't
wouldn't
care
do that
if
to you.
we don't care if you like Medusa's Coil. We're not reading it. Fuck Medusa's Coil.
Great.
Wonderful.
Now when YouTube asks me, is there any swearing or language in this? I'm gonna have to lie.
Fuck no.
Great.
Medusa's Coil is like his worst piece of racism on his stories. It's like, oh, it's
Yeah, I
unfair.
don't need to read that.
No.
I don't. I said Nosferatu's on Peacock, right? For
Yes.
those in the US.
And they're Nosferatu peacocks. That's what makes it interesting.
And Matt loved it, so you should watch it.
It's well worth seeing. It's just I didn't love it the way I wanted to.
Yeah.
Just watch it and occasionally freeze frame it and take in the beauty of it and then watch a little more.
Really good cast, good music, great visuals.
But isn't that just every Robert Eggers film?
Yeah.
Okay, here's a question.
What are you driving at there?
I was just saying.
I have not, I mean, don't take away my nerd card, but I have not seen The Lighthouse yet. Should I?
No.
Okay, that's what I thought.
We watched it. I could appreciate the artistry, but it was like sitting there, someone's like twisting your ear really hard for 2 hours.
It's tough. I mean, there's a movie there.
Well, he's got a fan base. I'm sure but it seems to me an acquired taste.
Yeah.
Like the woman says, turn out all the lights. And the lighthouse keeper says, what about all the boats?
How do you turn out a boat?
Lights in the lighthouse.
Oh, well, okay. Never mind. It's been one
It was
of those
bad
weeks.
anyway, and then I had to explain it. It was pitiful.
Yeah, sorry. Alan and I are going to start adding speaking of Lovecraftian games, Tim, we're going to start adding a Lovecraftian game playlist. So if you want to watch me or Alan or me and Alan play some games, it'll be there shortly. And okay, thanks, Pete. I'm about to wrap up too. See you, buddy.
Right. Not to be stupid, but you're going to be showing the gameplay on the screen, right?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yes, Ancient One. That's what we will be doing. Great. Another thing I have to lie to YouTube about. So anyway, if it takes off, if enough people are watching it, I'll create a new channel for Alan and me. Just do a Lovecraftian gamer channel or horror.
That sounds
gamer
pretty
channel
cool.
or something. Yeah.
Good idea. Was it Alan's idea? Because it's a good idea.
Oh my God. It was not Alan's idea, but you know what? He's a good influence on me, so we can probably give him the credit. And he knows far more about games and plays far more than I do. So
That's not a good thing.
I like playing. It's just every time I do, I'm like, this little voice goes, "You should be reading," you know. Tim, what's the last? We're gonna wrap up, but what's the last couple of horror movies, horror books you've seen that you enjoyed, maybe?
So I did like Nosferatu to look at. I went with my nephew, who's a Dracula completist, and so I was looking to him as to whether I could like it or not. And no, I was really quite impressed by it. Horror. Have you read the book The Vor by B. Catling?
Oh, I haven't heard of it.
The what?
The Vor, Vorrrh.
Huh. What is it?
It's fantasy horror, I would call it. But it was unlike anything I've read in the last 5-10 years. Well worth reading. It's got elements of science fiction, fantasy, and horror in it. You're not quite sure where
I'm
you
sorry.
are.
Can you spell it just one more time for me?
Yeah, V for Victor, O, R, Radio, Hotel.
Okay.
By
Brian
Romeo,
Catling.
Romeo Hotel. Thank you very much.
Yes. That made an impact on me. My goodness. Really did.
That's
It's
good to know.
constantly surprising. So definitely that.
Oh, wow.
Apart from that,
Prepare to lose yourself in the heady mythical expanse of the Vor. A daring debut that, listen to this, Alan Moore has called a phosphorant masterpiece and the current century's first landmark work of fantasy. Thank you for the recommendation. That's awesome.
Never heard of it, so I'll have to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. Very well written. And yeah, quite challenging. But it's not, it's not one of these important novels that you're gonna struggle with. So and
it's not Moby Dick.
Define
yeah.
important.
Yeah, isn't it? No, it's not. And I read a book. This is a book I wouldn't have read, but it was bought me by my niece. And it's called Our Wives Under the Sea. Now, this was horror. Julia Armfield.
Yeah. Okay. I see it.
Very good. Very good. I won't. It's got a real sense of real build to it. Now, as a reader who's read a lot of Cthulhu mythos,
yeah, I was about to say,
perhaps the payoff isn't quite as hard hitting as it would be for someone who hasn't, but it's got a real sense of dread as a novel, and cleverly written with exchanging paragraphs between the two characters.
Sense of dread in a movie and book, and game for that matter, is to me something that I'm always seeking in a horror experience, and it's hard to find sometimes, So, have you read? Speaking of, and I know he's a friend of mine, but have you read Laird Barron? Any of Laird Barron's work?
When you said the name, I know the name, but I'm trying to work out from where. I think
okay. You say that you really liked the novel Dagon.
Yes.
Confession, I despised it.
Mm-hmm.
If you want something a novel that ends with an incredibly horrific scene that the reader understands, but the characters really don't, The Croning. It's just bloody brilliant.
It's a damn good novel. You should read it.
Croning, The Croning.
course, every time I
You don't
mention
have to,
it,
you don't have to know any of his other mythology to enjoy the book.
oh, but
And
that
that's
said,
Laird Barron.
yes, Laird
Yeah.
Barron, Laird
Yeah.
Barron. But the also his short stories are fantastic. So yeah, I
Yeah,
agree
me.
with Matt. Start with the Croning, but then any of his short story collections, really.
Good.
And every time I
Like
mention,
that,
oh, a lot of people are talking about the Croning again. Laird, he's like, gets grouchy and says, "All I ever want to do is rewrite that book." I'm like, why?
Oh, you can't do that. Write us a new one.
Yeah.
He does have
That's
a new
great.
book coming
I've
out.
got three now. I've got three recommendations. Thank you.
Well, I've got recommendations from you too, so thank you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, no, you run a lovely show here. I will think about that Starbucks offer. I think I really should.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And
I will be.
for those folks watching live, I'm gonna go through just so I'm not doing it on the fly because I want to do it truly randomly. I'll go through all the comments an hour or two. I'll do it tonight and contact the person and randomly select someone. So using random.org, so it's truly random. So Matt, did you hear what he said about I run a good show? Did you just catch that?
Yeah, it's like clearly, look, English people do a lot of day drinking.
Oh my God.
So, you got it's a suspect comment, but take it for what it's worth.
Well, my opinion is, Tim, seriously, you were absolutely fascinating to talk to, and I appreciate you coming on. And you're welcome back anytime. So,
I'd love to see the
Brilliant.
game.
yeah.
Brilliant.
So,
Brilliant.
thanks for staying up late with us.
Thanks so much, guys.
All
Cheers.
right.
You
Bye.
may be in Providence in a year and a half, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah,
that
exactly.
too. That too.
All right.
Definitely.
Everyone have a good night, and thanks for being here.
Cheers, guys.